Crimson Manor had been abandoned for decades, its dark silhouette looming over the edge of the small town like a sinister shadow. The townsfolk whispered about the tragedies that befell those who dared to enter its creaking doors. It was said that the manor was cursed, haunted by the spirits of the family that once lived there. One Halloween night, a group of friends, Jack, Emily, Sarah, and Mike, decided to explore the infamous manor. Armed with flashlights and a video camera, they ventured into the darkness, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. As they crossed the threshold, a chill ran down their spines. The air inside was cold and heavy, filled with an oppressive silence. The grand foyer, once elegant, was now decayed and covered in dust. They split up, each taking a different part of the house to investigate. Jack headed to the library, where he found old books scattered across the floor. As he picked one up, he felt a sudden drop in temperature. His breath fogged in front of him, and he heard faint whispers echoing through the room. The whispers grew louder, forming words that sent shivers down his spine. "Get out. Leave now." Meanwhile, Emily explored the second-floor bedrooms. She entered a room that seemed untouched by time, the bed neatly made and toys scattered around as if waiting for a child to return. She felt a tug at her sleeve and turned to see a little girl standing in the corner, her eyes hollow and dark. "Play with me," the girl whispered, her voice a haunting melody. Emily's heart pounded as the girl moved closer, her hand reaching out. Down in the basement, Sarah and Mike discovered an old trunk. Inside, they found a diary belonging to the manor's previous owner, Lady Eleanor. The entries detailed a descent into madness, with Eleanor describing how she was tormented by unseen forces. As they read, the room seemed to close in on them. Shadows danced on the walls, and a cold wind howled through the cracks. The last entry read, "They are coming for me. I can hear them in the walls." Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut. The friends were plunged into darkness as their flashlights flickered and died. Panic set in as they heard footsteps above them, slow and deliberate. The air grew thick with the scent of decay. Mike tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. In the library, Jack's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see a figure standing in the doorway, its face obscured by darkness. The figure whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Emily's encounter with the ghostly child ended abruptly as the girl vanished, leaving behind a cold emptiness. She ran out of the room, calling for her friends. As Sarah and Mike struggled to find a way out of the basement, the walls seemed to pulse and breathe, as if the house itself was alive. They heard a voice, low and menacing, echo through the darkness, "You will never leave." In a desperate bid for escape, Jack, Emily, Sarah, and Mike reunited in the foyer. The front door was open, revealing the night outside. They ran towards it, but just as they reached the threshold, the door slammed shut. A cold hand gripped Jack's shoulder, pulling him back. The friends screamed as the house's spirits closed in, their ghostly forms emerging from the shadows. Lady Eleanor's anguished face appeared before them, her eyes filled with madness. "Join us," she whispered, her voice echoing through the manor. The townsfolk never saw Jack, Emily, Sarah, or Mike again. Crimson Manor stood silent, its secrets hidden within its walls. Those who dared to approach the house claimed they could hear whispers and see fleeting shadows, but no one ever dared to enter again. Years later, a new family moved to town. Intrigued by the legends, they decided to visit Crimson Manor. As they crossed the threshold, they felt a chill run down their spines. The air inside was cold and heavy, filled with an oppressive silence. The manor welcomed them with open arms, ready to claim new souls. Blackwood Manor stood at the edge of a dense forest, its imposing structure cloaked in ivy and decay. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about the mansion's dark history, tales of madness, betrayal, and an ancient curse that plagued the land. The last known owner, Lord Blackwood, had vanished mysteriously, leaving the estate to rot and the townspeople to wonder. On a crisp autumn evening, a group of friends Ethan, Lily, Ben, and Chloe decided to explore Blackwood Manor. They were thrill-seekers, drawn to the macabre legends surrounding the mansion. Armed with flashlights, a Ouija board, and a sense of adventure, they crossed the threshold into the dark, silent house. The grand foyer, once resplendent with chandeliers and ornate furnishings, was now a shadow of its former self. Cobwebs hung like curtains, and the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. As the friends ventured deeper, the oppressive silence seemed to swallow their footsteps. They decided to split up to cover more ground. Ethan and Lily took the east wing, while Ben and Chloe headed west. Ethan and Lily found themselves in a long hallway lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow the pair as they walked, sending shivers down their spines. In one of the rooms, they discovered an old journal belonging to Lord Blackwood. The entries were erratic, detailing his descent into madness. He wrote about voices in the walls, shadows that moved on their own, and a malevolent presence that consumed his every thought. The last entry read, "The curse is real. It will not let me go. They are coming for me tonight." Meanwhile, Ben and Chloe explored the library, where ancient tomes filled the shelves. They found a dusty tome on the occult, which mentioned a powerful curse tied to the land Blackwood Manor stood on. It spoke of a ritual that bound the spirits of the damned to the house, dooming anyone who dared to live there. As the sun set and darkness enveloped the manor, the friends regrouped in the foyer to share their findings. The atmosphere grew tense as they realized the gravity of the situation. Despite their fear, they decided to use the Ouija board to contact the spirits and find out more about the curse. They set up the board in the grand dining hall, its long table still adorned with decaying remnants of a feast. As they placed their fingers on the planchette, a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing their candles. The board began to move on its own, spelling out a chilling message, "Leave now." Suddenly, the manor came alive with supernatural activity. Doors slammed shut, trapping the friends inside. Whispering voices echoed through the halls, and ghostly apparitions appeared, their faces twisted in torment. The friends were filled with dread as they realized they had awakened the vengeful spirits of Blackwood Manor. Ethan, determined to find a way out, led the group to the basement, where they discovered a hidden chamber. Inside, they found a stone altar covered in dark symbols and a book of incantations. The book detailed a ritual to break the curse, but it required a blood sacrifice. As they debated what to do, the spirits grew more aggressive. The friends were separated, each facing their own horrors. Lily encountered the ghost of a maid who had been murdered by Lord Blackwood, her spectral form dripping with blood as she whispered, "Help me." Ben was pursued by shadowy figures that seemed to rise from the walls, their hands grasping at him. Chloe found herself in a room with mirrors that reflected not her own image, but that of a woman in a wedding dress, weeping blood. The woman reached out from the mirror, pulling Chloe into a nightmarish vision of her wedding day turned massacre, where Lord Blackwood had slaughtered his bride and guests in a fit of rage. Ethan, armed with the Book of Incantations, realized that he had to perform the ritual to save his friends. He made his way to the altar, reciting the incantations despite the spectral voices screaming in his ears. As he completed the ritual, the ground trembled and a blinding light filled the chamber. The spirits howled in fury as they were drawn into the light, their forms dissipating into nothingness. The house groaned and shook, as if trying to resist the breaking of the curse. Finally, the trembling ceased, and an eerie silence settled over Blackwood Manor. The friends regrouped, battered and terrified, but alive. They stumbled out of the house into the cool night air, the curse finally lifted. As they looked back at the manor, they saw it begin to crumble, as if the very foundations were being reclaimed by the earth. Years later, Blackwood Manor was nothing more than a ruin, overtaken by nature. The town, no longer plagued by the haunting presence, slowly forgot the horrors that had once consumed it. But the friends would never forget the night they faced the curse of Blackwood Manor, the memories of the spirit's tormented faces and the ancient curse lingering in their minds forever. Ravenswood Manor had stood for centuries on the outskirts of the small village of Elton. Surrounded by dense, ancient woods, the manor was a dark, foreboding presence that loomed over the landscape. Generations of villagers spoke of its cursed history, a tale of betrayal, madness, and a malevolent force that thrived within its walls. Few dared to approach, and those who did rarely returned the same. One autumn evening, a group of university students decided to explore the manor for a research project on local legends. There were 5 of them: Alex, the leader, and skeptic; Emma, the historian; Jake, the tech whiz; Olivia, the empath; and Max, the brave but superstitious one. Armed with cameras, recording equipment, and a map of the manor, they set off to uncover the truth behind the tales. As they approached the manor, a chill settled in the air. The gates creaked open with an eerie groan, and the students stepped into the overgrown garden, feeling the weight of centuries of secrets pressing down on them. The manor's front door, surprisingly intact, opened with a push, revealing a grand foyer shrouded in darkness. Alex took charge, distributing flashlights and assigning areas to explore. They decided to split up to cover more ground, planning to meet back in the foyer in an hour. Emma and Jake headed towards the library, Alex and Olivia explored the east wing, and Max ventured into the west wing alone. Emma and Jake found the library filled with dusty books and decaying furniture. As Emma scanned the shelves, she found a diary belonging to Lady Eleanor Ravenswood, the last known resident. Her entries painted a picture of a woman tormented by her husband's descent into madness and the dark forces that seemed to consume the manor. She wrote of shadows that moved on their own, whispers in the night, and a presence that grew stronger with each passing day. The final entry was a desperate plea for help, ending abruptly with a splatter of ink. In the east wing, Alex and Olivia discovered a series of rooms that seemed frozen in time. One room, a nursery, was particularly unsettling. Toys were strewn across the floor, and a music box played a haunting lullaby as they entered. Olivia, sensitive to the supernatural, felt a cold presence behind her. She turned to see a faint outline of a child, eyes wide with fear. "Help us," the ghostly figure whispered before vanishing. Max, exploring the west wing, found himself drawn to a locked door at the end of a long corridor. Using a rusty key he found in a nearby drawer, he unlocked the door and entered what appeared to be a study. The room was filled with dark wood furniture and the smell of old paper. On the desk lay a thick, leather-bound book with strange symbols etched into its cover. As he reached for it, the temperature plummeted, and a deep, guttural voice echoed in his mind, "You should not be here." Back in the library, Emma and Jake heard footsteps echoing in the hallway. Thinking it was one of their friends, they called out but received no response. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by a soft, sinister whispering. Emma clutched the diary, her hands shaking, while Jake frantically tried to get their equipment to record the phenomenon. The room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, forming shapes that resembled distorted, tormented faces. Alex and Olivia, disturbed by their encounter in the nursery, decided to regroup with the others. As they made their way back, they passed through a grand dining hall. The long table was set as if for a feast, but the plates and cutlery were tarnished and covered in dust. As they crossed the room, the chandeliers above them flickered to life, casting eerie shadows on the walls. They heard faint laughter and the clinking of glasses, as if invisible guests were enjoying a macabre banquet. Max, driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, opened the leather-bound book. The pages were filled with incantations and dark rituals, detailing how Lord Ravenswood had attempted to harness the power of the supernatural to achieve immortality. The final ritual, unfinished, required the sacrifice of innocent souls to bind the manor's spirits to his will. As Max read the words aloud, the room shook, and the shadows coalesced into a dark, menacing figure. "You cannot escape," it hissed, advancing toward him. In the library, Emma and Jake were surrounded by the whispers and shadows. Desperate, Emma flipped through Lady Eleanor's diary, finding a passage about a hidden chapel in the basement where the curse could be broken. They decided to head there, hoping to find a way to end the haunting. Alex and Olivia reached the foyer and found it transformed. The walls were covered in blood-red writing, spelling out warnings and curses. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the temperature had dropped to a bone-chilling cold. As they called out for their friends, the front door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Max, pursued by the dark figure, ran towards the foyer, the book clutched in his hands. He burst through the doors just as Alex and Olivia were about to give up hope. Gasping for breath, he told them about the book and the unfinished ritual. They realized they needed to find Emma and Jake and head to the hidden chapel. Emma and Jake had already found the entrance to the basement, concealed behind a bookshelf in the library. The descent was treacherous, the old stairs creaking under their weight. The basement was a labyrinth of stone corridors, filled with the stench of mold and decay. Following the diary's instructions, they navigated through the darkness until they reached a heavy wooden door marked with strange symbols. Reunited, the group entered the chapel. It was a grim, cold place with an altar at the center. Strange markings covered the walls, and the air was thick with an oppressive presence. As they prepared to perform the ritual, the shadows gathered around them, whispering threats and curses. With trembling hands, Max read the incantation from the book. The shadows writhed and twisted, forming a vortex around the altar. The friends joined hands, chanting together as the air grew colder and the darkness pressed in on them. The ground shook, and the walls seemed to close in. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the chapel, and the shadows screamed in agony. The light grew brighter, dispelling the darkness and the malevolent spirits. The house shuddered violently, as if fighting against the purification, but finally, it fell silent. Exhausted and shaken, the friends stumbled out of the basement and into the morning light. Ravenswood Manor, once a place of terror and despair, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the house stood silent and empty. The villagers of Elton were astonished to see the students return, their faces pale but resolute. The manor, now free of its curse, was left to crumble and decay. The friends, forever changed by their ordeal, vowed never to speak of what they had witnessed. Years passed, and Ravenswood Manor became a distant memory. Nature slowly reclaimed the land, and the house faded into legend. But the friends knew the truth, knew that some places are touched by darkness, and that sometimes, the past refuses to stay buried.